Arizona, de Inishtat, Shatat, Dr. Trent Anderson, will ya? Hello, everyone. My name is Kaitlyn Haskie. I am Navajo, and as customary in many Indigenous cultures, including the Navajo culture, we introduce ourselves using our clan systems and our familial ties. So I said that I was the Salt clan, born for the Water Flows Together clan. My maternal grandfather was the Many Goats, and my paternal grandfather was the Towering House clan. My parents are Vernon and Miranda Haskie, and my grandfather was Leonard Haskie. I'm currently a third-year PhD student studying medical pharmacology at the University of Arizona, and my principal investigator is Dr. Trent Anderson, and in his lab, we investigate post-traumatic headache after a mild traumatic brain injury. And I'll be talking a little bit about what that entails later on. Yeah, so that's me. That's who I am. I wanted to start off by giving a land acknowledgement. The University of Arizona has an official land acknowledgement that they've issued, and it's the one you see on the screen. So I'm just going to read it, and I've made my own personal addendum, which is the little part at the bottom. I'll also read that too. So we respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. As a researcher, I recognize that my work takes place on Indigenous land, and I seek to uphold principles of respect, reciprocity, and collaboration with Native nations. So I want to start with a little bit of background, how I got to where I am today. So a little bit of, I wanted to walk you through this slide a bit. The landscape you see back here is from my home. I'm originally from Lukuchukai, Arizona, and we live in the valley below the mountains. And here's my family when it was just the four of us. I have two younger brothers who are not pictured in here, but I couldn't find, I need to go back and find those family photos. So I started, I went to school on the Navajo Nation. I went to a public school at in Saline, Arizona, which is about 17 minutes away from my home. But you know, the hour a bus commute could take like an hour to 2 hours to get home, to and from home. And sorry. And I remember when I was growing up, I really liked doing things with my hands, and I felt like I was very artistic. So that was something that I thought I would do when I grew up. And one time there was a therapist who asked me, what are the things your younger self told yourself to protect yourself? And I remember I immediately thought back to being in third grade and having to do to do long division, and also to do working on timetables, reading time. And I remember I would get, the questions would ask like what time it is, and you have to guess what time it is based on these clock faces. And growing up, I didn't know how to read a clock face, despite like learning and understanding, like it felt like I had to relearn each time I looked at a clock face. And even then I was always second guessing myself. And so at that point, this was like third grade, I felt like, I think there was a seed that was planted there. I thought that if I couldn't read clock faces, I wouldn't be good at math. And then that ideology later developed into, if I'm not good at math, then I'm not going to be good at science, which eventually evolved into like, I'm not going to be good at STEM. And so this idea stayed with me all the way until high school, secondary education. And I always thought like I would love to work in science, but I kept reminding myself like, you're not going to be good at it because you're I wasn't able to, I felt like I wasn't able to thrive in that space. And so when I was graduating from high school, I had a difficult decision to make, whether I wanted to major in English or microbiology at Northern Arizona University. And it was sort of like a double-edged sword. Like the idea that I couldn't do math, because I felt like I couldn't do math. I put a lot of my energy into reading books, reading and writing, and so I feel like I really flourished in that area. And I wouldn't say I was bad at math, but I had to work harder at it than a lot of other people who it came to naturally. So at NAU, I initially was set to do English as my major. And it wasn't until the last moment when I sat down with my advisor and she was asking me what major I wanted to declare, that I just sort of on a last minute decision decided, why not? Why not try microbiology? I knew that that's something that I had an interest in, and if I fail, at least I tried. And so I remember the first semester I went in taking these core biology courses, and I thought that I would just get a C, I would be content with just a C. But it didn't turn out that way. It turned out I got A's and B's, and that kind of set forth the path, a change in path from the arts to more of the sciences. And so at NAU, I was able to get a double major in applied Indigenous studies and microbiology. And because of that, I really felt like the love from the faculty in the AIS department really cultivated this love of learning in me. And they gave me such confidence to feel like I could go on and do anything I wanted to. And so I decided, I was thinking that I wanted to be a doctor, like an MD. And so with that in mind, I applied to a one-year master's program at Duke University that specialized in biomedical sciences. And the whole idea behind the program was to give you, to prepare you for medical school. They had us become EMTs in the state of North Carolina. And we took about 70% of the course load of first-year medical students. We were doing volunteer hours, just everything to help build us to be a great applicant for medical school. And so during the program, there was a lot of late nights. I was always stressed. I remember I would go to bed at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'd wake up around 9 to do it all over again. And I think all of that compounded. And I started to recognize that some things were happening that I couldn't explain with my brain. One of those things was I would lose track of time. And when people said things were due, my brain just wouldn't, it kind of hit like a wall. Information at some point just hit a wall, and it wouldn't go any further, despite me trying to jam things in there. And finally, I discussed this with the learning specialist at Duke University. I'm very grateful that they had one. And she said, why don't we get you a learning, why don't we take you to get psychoeducational evaluation? And so I did that. And through that, I learned that I have dyscalculia. And dyscalculia is kind of it's sort of like dyslexia with numbers, which explained a whole lot of things. One of the symptoms, or one of the common things discussed about dyscalculia, is that people have a hard time reading clock faces. And I felt like that was such a huge revelation. It was amazing to have this diagnosis, but it was also a bit shameful. I remember feeling angry that nobody caught it. Why didn't any of my teachers catch this? Why isn't it until grad school that I had to be finally diagnosed with something like this? But yeah, so nowadays I kind of teeter between frustration and resiliency with my diagnosis. I don't think it's some days I wish I didn't have it. Some days I think it could be kind of like a boon, a blessing. You know, it kind of allows me to think differently. I think about some different subjects. I have to be very meticulous sometimes in my planning because of that. So anyways, after I graduated from Duke, I was wondering if I still wanted to do medical school. I was questioning if that was the right path for me, because ultimately I wanted to do research. And I know you can do research with an MD degree, but you can also do research with a PhD. And so I took a break from school. I wanted to work because that was very important to me to get those professional skills before I continue in school. Because prior to that, I had been in school my entire life. And so I'm really happy that I decided to do that, because I think some of the things, the social aspects of working, you don't really get until you're in a workplace. So it allowed me some time to think, did I really want to go to medical school? And not really. I decided that I would pivot from medical school to a PhD of philosophy, doctorate of philosophy. And at this point, I knew I still wanted to do neuroscience. When I was on the doctor trajectory, I was thinking of neurology, being a neurosurgeon. But after that pivot, I knew I still wanted to be in neuroscience. And so I was looking at schools. My time at Duke was very challenging. I think one of the things that I learned, among all the things I learned, one of the biggest things is I knew that if I were to thrive in graduate school, I would need to be closer to home. I would need a place where my identity as an Indigenous person is recognized and celebrated. I knew that I would need to see Indigenous faculty, or just to see other Indigenous people on campus. You know, that visibility was very important to me. And so looking at schools that had a high American Indian or Alaska Native populations, you know, really there's pockets all over the country, like University of Colorado, Denver has a lot of Native people there. California has a lot of Native people there. And I knew I wanted to be closer to home. So Southwest, I'm thinking. University of Arizona has a lot of Native people here. And so I think it came down to U of A, because I knew that they had great Indigenous faculty here. They had the Native Nations Institute. I would be closer to home. It's still quite a bit of a far drive from home, but I am a lot closer than Duke. Yeah, and so that's where I am right now. I am here at the University of Arizona. I'm currently in Tucson, and I've really enjoyed my time here. Here are a couple of pictures showing you some of my research some of the things that I do here at U of A. And here is a picture of me back home when we're steaming corn. So around harvest time, we'll, in our mud oven, we build a big fire and we let that burn until there's ash. And then when it's ready, we'll pour the corn in, and then we pour some water in there, a bucket of water, to create this steam oven. And then we close it and we let it steam all night. And then by the morning, it's cooked and ready to go. And you can do a couple of things with that. You can dry it and we use that for soup, or you could eat it then. But here's me in lab, just doing lab stuff. Here's a couple of things I'm working on. I'm using a confocal microscope here to get clear images of mice brains. So I work primarily with mice. Here's a picture of a mouse that I'm doing behavioral assays with, or experiments with. So speaking of my research, I wanted to talk a little bit about it. So my research is focused on post-traumatic headache, which is a common sequela or consequence of traumatic brain injury, and it can progress to chronic and debilitating conditions. In the US, about 69 million people per year experience TBIs, and about 2 to 3 million of those are in the US alone. Most of them are caused by traffic accidents, falls, and violence. And A traumatic brain injury can be defined as brain trauma resulting from an external force, such as like a blow or a jolt to the head. And clinically, this presents as having at least 30 minutes or less of a loss of consciousness. You could have post-traumatic amnesia. There's sometimes disorientation or confusion after the injury. Or in more severe cases, you can have neurological signs like changes in speech, numbness, or weakness of the limbs. And so of those traumatic brain injuries, they can be categorized as mild, moderate, or severe. So our work primarily focuses in the mild sphere. So of those TBIs, about 70% of them are considered mild, and that's really where where our lab kind of sits. So I feel like this is the audience to present this more like, what does this look like in Indian country? And there's not a lot of data on TBIs in Indian country, although I did find this one by the Tribal Epidemiology Center here in Arizona. And this is what they found. According to them, most TBIs are caused by falls, followed by violence, followed by struck by or against. And that usually includes like unintentional injuries in which somebody or something came in contact with the person. So you can think like sports related injuries, or like people who work construction and are just unintentionally harmed. And then following that are traffic accidents. And you'll probably hear this statistic a lot, but TBI included, a lot of Indian country ranks pretty high for a lot of diseases, including traumatic brain injury. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the symptoms of post-concussion syndrome. So having discussed the broader impacts of traumatic brain injuries, we also have to focus on the aftermath, specifically those post-concussion syndromes that many individuals might experience. And these symptoms can include memory problem, changes in mood, changes in sensitivity to light and noise. But the #1 symptom reported by patients as the most debilitating and most frequent is headache. And that's where the lab, where we work mostly, is working on post-traumatic headache. So about 75 to 95% of people will have new or worse headaches within the first year of the traumatic brain injury. And about 40% of people will have a headache beyond a year. And I'll show you a little graph about that. Also, it's worth noting that there are currently no evidence-based treatments that were specifically developed to treat post-traumatic headache. So things like Tylenol, sometimes they don't help people. Things like traditional migraine medicines might not help people. And so here I want to talk a little bit about the phases of post-traumatic headache. So after a mild traumatic brain injury, let's say here an MTBI, a person might develop a headache within 7 days of the injury. We call that the acute phase within that 7 days. For most people, over time, it will subside. For others, the headache will just be a persistent post-traumatic headache. And sometimes it'll last longer than 3 months. And it's very unfortunate, but sometimes it could be like just oscillating between like on a pain scale of 10, 9, 8, 7. And it's just like you're always in that painful, on that pain scale. For others, it might look more similar to episodic migraine, where one thing just kind of triggers it and you'll get a headache. For most humans, that trigger is often stress. Stress is the #1 cause of re-aggravation of post-traumatic headache. And so stress can, if it's triggered, if stress happens, it can trigger that persistent post-traumatic headache phase. And so in our lab, we were interested in looking at post-traumatic headache neurocircuitry. And this involves looking at, we use migraine as our roadmap. So migraine is a little more well studied than post-traumatic headache. And in migraine, you have these key areas that show up. In migraine, what happens is that pain signals in the dura are sent to the trigeminal ganglion. From there, they synapse in the SP5C, the trigeminal nucleus caudalis. And in humans, they'll synapse at like the parabrachial, the paraaqueductal gray, the brainstem area. And then for some people, it'll hit, or yes, for all people, it'll hit in the thalamus. And you can think of the thalamus in the brain as like a relay center. It's kind of telling people, it's communicating the information that's being sent up and the information that's collected in the brain. And from there, once it hits the thalamus in some key areas, it'll then synapse in the cortex. And in the cortex, that's really where the perception of pain will be perceived. And then from there, it travels back down. But we're not really going to focus on that today. And so with this migraine roadmap, our next question is like, are the circuits that are driving post-traumatic headache the same that are driving the traditional or this migraine headache pathway? And so to do that, we use a combination of techniques in the lab. We use animal behavior. I use, here is a elevated plus maze. This is to test anxiety. And you're placing mice on this, this plus maze. And there's a closed arm and there's an open arm. And mice are naturally curious animals. And so they've got these two fighting wants in them. They either want to, if they're scared or they're stressed, they'll want to hang out more in the closed arms. But if they're relatively okay, they'll spend some time in the open arms. So like you can see this mouse is going all the way to the end because it's curious. It'll go sometimes in the open arms. So that's usually typically indicative of a mouse that's not really stressed. In addition, we do this thing called von Frey, which is testing for allodynia or nociception or pain. And essentially it's like we apply a filament to the mouse's head. And you can think of it like in humans, if someone was just going to poke your head, normally this shouldn't hurt, a poke to the head. But for people who suffer from post-traumatic headache, sometimes pokes to the head is enough to elicit a pain response, enough to create a headache. And you can think of like people who wear glasses. Normally the nose bridge, it shouldn't hurt an individual, should not be triggering headaches. For people who do have PTH, that might happen, right? So that's kind of what we're seeing here in this mouse model. We poke them and we measure if it's a positive response. In this case, this mouse responded positively because it's shaking its head and it kind of even swipes its head. In this case, the animal responded negatively. So it's just kind of chilling. It doesn't react to the poke. Another way, once we do the behavioral testing, we then are able to do things like histology. And this is where you can gather and cut the actual mouse brain. And we can like stain it with markers to mark for various things that we want to look at. In this case, we were marking it for CFOS activity. CFOS is like a proxy for neuronal activity. So you can think like areas that have high levels of fluorescence, like this area here, could have more activity in post-traumatic headache. So trying to help us figure out what parts of the brain are important to the development of post-traumatic headache. And here I have an example of a brain that I fit with an atlas. And from there, we can further delineate what parts of the brain might have that CFOS activity. So this like really bright green and bright red activity. And from there, we can take that data and we can start to put it into various statistical models. We can do things like look for clustering. Like, is there a clustering between two cell populations? You know, do two cell populations overlap, or are they just like really close together? You know, if they're close together, maybe they're firing together. The other thing we can look at is to see how far they are apart from each other. So you can see here, the CFOS, this is about the range, like the norm, like their nearest neighbor is about this range. I would say like 10 micrometers maybe. And then we can also put those averages or that data into a heat map like you see here and help us visualize even further where might that CFOS activity be happening. You can see here in the cortex, some here. And that kind of concludes my talk. I just kind of wanted to end with one last thing. If you guys are thinking of writing a personal statement, I highly recommend this book. It was recommended to me by my partner, Sean. I really love this book. If you're like me, I like reading other people's essays or just reading how they write to get a sense of how I want to write about myself or about things. And so I felt like this was a great composite of just everybody's personal essays into one. So yeah, I highly recommend this source. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. I would like to acknowledge my PI, Dr. Trent Anderson, my lab colleagues, Colin Batter and Dr. Gwahi Lee. I'd also like to thank our collaborators, and of course my mom and dad and my partner, Sean Leister. And our funding sources were funded by the Department of Defense and the National Institutes of Health. And I'm personally funded by the Sloan Scholars Program here at the University of Arizona.
Thank you so much, Kaitlyn. What you're doing is some mind-blowing research there. I do, before we get going with our next amazing guest speaker, do you mind maybe telling our audience what your research might, what would be the outcome of your research? What do you hope to find or create for the world based on your research?
Wow, yeah. Well, where I'm headed, I'm thinking that I want to, in Indian country, we have a lot of oral histories, right, about medicinal properties of various things. And if you think about, for example, Vaseline was discovered by Native Americans in Pennsylvania, but they're not the ones who took it and got it patented, right? It was instead a white chemist who did that and created Vaseline. I feel like that happens a lot with like indigenous knowledge. And what I ultimately would like to do is try to bridge those things, like try to do research with using indigenous medicinal practices and see, is there to test it in our models and see if there's something there so that we as indigenous people can start patenting our own pharmaceuticals. Like ultimately, I would love to do that. That's what I would love to do. Getting there though is another process.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That kind of ties it all together. Your whole presentation, who you are, where you're from, your background, your path. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you.
And let me open up my little Rose. Do you know what is your last name? Is it Bear Don't Run? No, Bear Don't Walk.
Bear Don't Walk. Yeah.
Bear Don't Walk. I'm sorry. I forgot to put the last name on my notes here for my but I am just so grateful that you guys have agreed to speak and share yourselves with our audience. And I really want to welcome Rose. Rose seeks to bridge science, culture, and health through her work with traditional indigenous foods and native plants of Northwest Montana. Rose grew up on the Flathead Indian Reservation and is a descendant of the Bitterroot Salish. Did I say that right? Is it Salish or Salish?
Salish.
Salish, thank you. And Crow tribes. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Yale and a Master's of Science in Environmental Studies from the University of Montana. Currently, Rose centers her research on the long-standing relationship Salish people have formed with food plants and their role in community health at Montana State University. in their Indigenous and Rural Health PhD program. Welcome, Rose. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to share my screen, so let me know when you can see it. Because
I can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So, pasia usli tramhuist en lamke Louis Quest. Chi scale ustem chi til sinjalamen, chin chatl upen spent, Eldina tramhuist en lamke Lewin Tomb, Joshua Brown Lewin Mestum, Marjorie u Urban, tramhuist en lamke Lewin Pot, Yapin Chimislamti Huid Yashwaske U Wichin Lu Pasia Yelaet. So good day everyone. My name is Rose Bear Don't Walk. I'm Bitterroot Salish and Crow from Montana. I am 30 years old. My parents are Joshua Brown and Eldina Bear Don't Walk, who are in that photo. And then my grandparents are Urban Bear Don't Walk and Marjorie Bear Don't Walk. I come from two very different tribes in Montana. I have a map I'll show you in the next slide, but primarily grew up on the Flathead Indian Reservation and feel very, very close to my my Salish tribe and Salish way of life. The Bear Don't Walk in my name comes from my grandfather's side, which is the Crow tribe. And I was partially raised by my grandparents, as most people are in our communities. So I have been brought up in these two different spaces, but also by some pretty incredible people. My grandfather was one of the first American Indian lawyers in the country, and my grandmother stood up one of the first urban Indian health clinics in the state of Montana. And they both instilled in me a sense of providing for my people and always being an advocate. I currently go to school in the place that they met, so I'm pretty grateful to have that experience at Montana State University in their Indigenous and Rural Health program. I'm currently a PhD candidate there. I'm in my third year. I'm hoping to finish up in 4 years, but we'll see how the research portion goes. I'm still in my IRB process. If anyone has questions about that, I got lots to say. But this is just a little bit about me, where I come from, who I am. We kind of covered a little bit of that in the introduction already. But when I'm not doing my PhD, I am also working full-time as a health equity analyst at Indigenous Pact. We are a B corporation that is Native woman owned, that focuses on Indigenous health and healthcare delivery. A lot of what I've been doing within my work is trying to understand the barriers that Native people face in the current healthcare system and how we can mitigate some of those barriers, as well as empowering tribal communities to use their sovereignty to make their health systems better and better serve their people. Last year, I was also awarded the Luce Indigenous Knowledge Fellowship, which is a fellowship designed to empower tribal knowledge holders to basically do whatever passion project they want to do in their communities. So it's a great source of funding if anyone is interested in that, and anybody can apply. So, I mean, we have people that are elders, we have people that are scholars, we have people that are linguists. It really just is a great, great program, and I'll be using the funds to help with my research and be able to provide adequate compensation to my community. So that is the map that I referenced earlier. So the Flathead Reservation is on the left side. It's in that little kind of blue area. And the Crow Reservation is a little bit more southeastern, very different ecosystems and landscapes. And so I think that's really reflected in the culture and all of the different, I guess, food plants that we used and food systems that we employed in these different tribal communities. And I think this is a good starting point to kind of share my why and what I do. So if you can see that traditional territories, kind of all of that blue area for the Pend Oreille and the Salish. We were traditionally our homelands were in the Bitterroot Valley, but we were forcibly removed to the Flathead Indian Reservation in 1891 after the Hellgate Treaty was established. And we are very lucky to be a tribal group that was removed to territory that we already knew. However, the circumstances weren't great anyways, but a lot of the food systems and the place names and the landscapes and environment, my ancestors were already knowing and had established relationships with. So I feel very lucky to be in that environment and grow up in that environment and learn about all of the food plants that we have in our area. So a little bit about my academic timeline. Oh, I see your hand.
I'm so sorry. I didn't. Did everyone else see the map? Well, you were talking about a map, correct?
Yeah. Is there no map there?
We see your screen.
Yeah, now I see your academic timeline.
Oh, it might be lagging. Wait.
Oh, okay. Maybe. Oh, there. Now I see the map. Okay.
You see the map now?
That
Okay.
yes. Okay. Yeah. I was really curious whenever you were talking about it. I was like, wait, where's the map?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No
Maybe
worries.
it's some sort of
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you
lag.
for going
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
to reference that. Yes. Oh,
Mhm.
look at that. Is that a picture of you holding?
Yeah, so that's a bitterroot. That's like a really important staple food of our people,
Yes.
and it should be coming up in the next couple months here soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. So kind of going back to this timeline here. So when I graduated from high school, I always knew that I wanted to go to college. I think that was something that my grandparents and my parents really instilled in me to go out and see the world and experience it beyond the reservation. I know it can be very scary to go somewhere new, to go from a place where you are the majority to where you are the minority. But I think going to Yale was probably one of the best experiences of my life. It was there where I was really exposed to rigorous academia, but also just a variety of different people from all different parts of the world that exposed me to a more diversified way of thinking, and it really universalized like how I saw the world. And I think that's really important for us to get ourselves out there, to meet new people, to share our perspective, because the more people that know about Indigenous peoples, the more they understand maybe the issues that we face or the disenfranchisement that our communities have. So it was there I really focused on food systems. It was there that I understood that I grew up in a food desert. I didn't really know it growing up, but then I was studying it and I was like, oh, wait, whoa, this is describing where I live. There's not enough access to healthy, nutritious, culturally relevant foods. And why is that? And also, what are the health outcomes that are associated with those barriers that we have faced historically and currently to healthy foods, but also traditional foods? I also went and studied abroad in New Zealand, which was also a really great experience. So just really putting myself out there, even though it was very scary, and had the experience of a lifetime. After that, I came home. I taught Salish language at my high school for a year while I kind of figured out what I wanted to do with my life, what I wanted to be when I grew up. This TEK master's program popped up in State University of New York, Syracuse. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. That sounds like right up my alley, food systems and access to land and all these things. So I moved to New York without a car. I had a bike. I started this graduate program, didn't really know anybody, wasn't established in the tribal community. Graduate schools are very different from like college, because in college, you live on campus, you have suite mates, you have roommates. When you go to a graduate program, it's kind of like, oh yeah, you're an adult now. You have to like live on your own and pay bills and all this stuff. And don't recommend, but we're doing it. So I went there. I discovered my passion for ethnobotany. I was taught a ethnobotany from Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is a really renowned ethnobotanist, and she teaches there. And I was just like, well, this is really cool. I want to learn more about the plants of my people and how we can revitalize this knowledge, because currently in my community, there are people that still hunt and fish, but not a lot of people that carry this plant knowledge. And as I learned more, there's hundreds and hundreds of plants that we use for food and medicine and tools and all sorts of things, but not a lot of that is being passed down to the next generation. So I wanted to study that, understand it, make a difference in some of these health outcomes that we are experiencing due to nutrition-related deficiencies. So I, went there for a semester, found out what I loved, realized that what I loved was like thousands of miles away. And I made the really difficult decision to drop out of the program, to stop my lease, and to move home. And honestly, that again was one of the best decisions I ever made for my career, for my health, and for my academic study. So went to the University of Montana, got to study under an incredible ethnobotanist there as well. She's Blackfeet, Rosalind Lapierre. She does a lot of really great Blackfeet historical work, but also ethnobotany on her reservation as well, which is also in Montana. I was closer to my family, to my tribe, to the plants. There is kind of when I started to dabble in this idea that I was a scientist. I think growing up, I didn't really think I could do science. I got like a C in chemistry, and it rocked my world because I couldn't be the valedictorian anymore. Biology was cool, but I wasn't super into it. And so once I found this kind of niche of something I really, truly loved, then I started feeling comfortable in this kind of science realm. But I knew that in order to really, truly understand the plants of my people, I wanted to get the Western aspect, but also the traditional cultural aspect as well. And meshing those together worked really well for me in being able to go out and identify plants on my own, because I didn't have anybody to do that in my family. My grandmother went to boarding school, so the Salish side of her family kind of was severed from any sort of cultural ties that we had. And so I learned a lot of that on my own, and to no fault of her own, because that is a really hard time of our history. But I took general botany, I took some ecosystem courses, just some basic science, collegiate level. I was with undergrads as a graduate student, but I didn't really care because it was super cool to dissect plants and stuff like that. And also coupled with these TEK courses, I was really able to understand that what I wanted to study was Salish traditional food plants, and their impact on Salish health, and also how our eating patterns over time have changed due to, historical barriers, settler colonization, the current Western food system that we live in today, that kind of thing. So that takes me to where I am today, which is this Indigenous and Rural Health Program. I can do this program remotely, which is really incredible. There are a lot of colleges and universities that are allowing for remote work, which I think, especially for Indigenous students, is really helpful, because if you want to do Indigenous and rural health in your community, we live in rural communities. Most tribal reservations are in rural communities. It makes sense that in order to operate within those communities, we need to be working remotely rather than on campus. So I do that, and it's been really great. I'm focusing my research on understanding knowledge transmission, of how we are passing down traditional food plant knowledge to the next generation. What are the barriers that people face in accessing that knowledge? And how do we see the future of Salish people and plants coexisting 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that kind of thing. And so I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I chose ethnobotany because it's something that really excites me. I love looking at plants. I love taking pictures of plants, as you can see. I love trying new foods, trying new things, and sharing this knowledge with other people. And something I found, not just in my research, but also just interacting in my community in general is that when we engage in our traditional food systems and we eat our traditional foods, sure, they're not, the heavy salted and sugared and, flour and all of that stuff that we experience in our daily diets. And they might not taste incredible, but they have this sort of ancestral connection that links us to our people and to the land and to our family and tribe. And I think there's something really beautiful that happens to our health when we engage with these plants. And that's what I'm trying to encourage in my own community with the revitalization of traditional food plant knowledge. I believe that we can be healthier as people the more that we use it, the more that we engage with it, the more that we pass it down to the next generation. So working in healthcare specifically within my day job, it's really interesting to see how my academic work and my professional work intersect, because I understand that colonization, westernization, assimilation is how we got to the current health outcomes that we face in our communities. And it's very poor. We have very poor health outcomes. We have some of the lowest life expectancies of any group in the United States. And I know that we have to work with what we have at the moment. And so, yes, that means treating kind of more acute illnesses in our communities so that we can get to a place of stabilization in our healthcare system, in our health, so that maybe sometime in the future, we can focus on this kind of prevention aspect and bringing in culture back into the fabric of society so that we don't have to worry about these acute health illnesses later down the line. We're already putting those protections in place by learning our language, engaging in the seasonal round, telling stories, foraging, building tools, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what this graph shows. This is a seasonal round. It was created by one of my committee members who is a teacher at Salish Kootenai College. He's also Salish. And this is how we operated throughout the entire year. We had these seasons, but within the seasons, there are all these things that Salish people did. And they all had to do with working within the environment, but also engaging with the plants, the animals, the water, and the people. And so I believe the closer that we can get to that in our society, the better off we'll be health-wise. But I also know that within healthcare and where I am right now in work, we still need to help the people that already have those illnesses or already, need our help in improving health equity. So, there's a long way to go in our healthcare systems, but I do believe that the more people that we can get working in healthcare, understanding health disparities and health inequities, not just through, medicine, but also through kind of traditional ecological knowledge and bringing up, those cultural aspects, I think we'll be better off as an Indigenous nation. So I guess my advice would be in my many years of academia, I'm 30 now and I'm still in school, which is kind of crazy to say, is to look for opportunities everywhere. I mean, I applied for a lot of Native-centered scholarships, but I also applied to a lot of knowledge-based scholarships. So like these are things that are like in ecology or wildlife biology or botany or those different types of things. Like you don't have to be totally siloed into just looking for American Indian, Alaska Native scholarships. They do help. I think there is a higher chance of you getting those, but just expanding your searches could probably, maybe you'll get a botany scholarship from some random school somewhere just by trying it out. Study abroad, see the world. The world is so big, and there are Indigenous communities everywhere, and some of them have some of the same issues that we have, but are very welcoming and very opening. And I just think the more that we can see the world, understand different people's point of view, the better off we are as people, but also the better off we are as communities by bringing those perspectives in. Finding schools and careers that support you as a person. I specifically chose Yale because they sent me a letter from the Native American Cultural Center, specifically to me, saying how excited they were about me considering the school. Here are all the resources that Native students have there. I just felt like they went the extra mile to make me feel welcome. And I think that's really important when choosing where you're going to go next, not just school-wise, but professional, career-wise. Also be open to career shifts. I never thought that I was going to work in healthcare. I thought I was going to be a lawyer 10 years ago. And I tried to do the LSAT, and that was just not fun. So I didn't go that route, to my grandfather's dismay. However, I do think they would be very proud that I am still working for the benefit of Native people, but just in a different avenue. So, you're always learning and you're always growing. And if you keep your purpose at the center of what you do, whatever career you choose, you'll have an impact. And I think that's important when you're kind of thinking, oh, what do I want to be when I grow up? It might just show up in a class some random day. One of the other things is just like find ways to integrate culture into your life if you live far from home. That was something I had to struggle with when I went to Syracuse, when I went to Yale. Actually currently live in North Carolina right now. So I saw someone who's from North Carolina, and then our previous speaker went to Duke. So like North Carolina is like a place to be, I guess. But by being, so far from my community, I've been trying to find ways to just stay close. So I'm taking online Salish language courses, just kind of listening into different webinars, that kind of thing. If you're worried about being removed from your area, there are ways that you can work within the institutions to keep your culture close to you. And it's always going to be there. I think we have to remind ourselves that. And then lastly, I'll just say, fight for your discipline. I think Western science and Western medical institutions tend to discredit Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous thought. But I also believe that our people were the healthiest on the planet prior to colonization because of all of these different life ways that we had implemented and lived by for many, many years. And so I am not afraid to tell people that culture is prevention, and integrating culture into the healthcare spaces is how we make people excited to come to their healthcare appointments, how we get them comfortable. But also, I think people would just widely benefit from utilizing some of our methods and ideologies around health and wellness from an Indigenous perspective. So always advocate for that. And also, as a patient, always advocate for your health. Generally, a lot of our providers, I think I looked it up today, it's like 0.3% of American Indians and Alaska Natives are within healthcare provider positions. And so because of this dominated Western society, as patients, we should very much still advocate for ourselves and what we need in terms of our own healthcare. So those are just little tidbits that I've learned throughout my time. I know we're coming to a close here. I don't know if there was any questions, but I think I just wanted to end with this kind of intersectionality of my work as a healthcare professional, but also as an ethnobotanist. They can inhabit the same body, even though they may come from different, worlds, because we all have the same goal. We all want healthier tribal communities for the next generations. And so even if I'm doing this work, in a professional career, I'm still always thinking and learning from my Salish community and participating in traditional activities, because that's how we become healthier as a society. but helping other tribal nations in their health and healthcare delivery is also super fulfilling as well. So that's just a little bit of what I got for you. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. That both of you speaking from your heart. You put me through all of the emotions just in this one webinar. This was wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your knowledge, your journeys, your choices, and some of the things that happened along your path. So if anybody has any questions for either of our guest speakers, you can type them in the chat or feel free to speak if you would like. You two are powerful. You're powerful right where you are, and I am so happy for you and your journey and what you're doing in our communities. I just feel grateful. I'm about to tear up. But thank you both for being our guests. And you're so passionate about your why you're doing this. And this makes so much sense to a lot of our people. And I think they can absolutely relate to your why. And I hope just telling your stories will help some of our audience members. It will enlighten their own path as to what they might want to go into and stuff like. And yes, so thank you so much. And it's just for allowing your honesty to shine through just in your words. It was wonderful. So we'll wait for a few questions, and I can most definitely share to the rest of our AISES nation that you two are wonderful speakers, and I'm sure you guys are going to be getting a ton of emails and calls from AISES for future webinars. We also have with us in our audience my director of the Student Success Program, Dr. Johnny Pula. I don't know if he wanted to hop on, if he's available to say anything. If not, I know he loved it just as much as I did. I think there are some questions in the chat. If either of you wanted to address those, you can. But I'm going to, I know in the email we did say there was going to be a gift card at the end of this webinar. Again, I can't thank you, Rose and Kaitlyn, enough. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can share my screen.
Rose, I did.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could share with us some of your key findings from your research on the transmission of traditional ecological knowledge between generations. Are there some surprising things you found?
Not anything super surprising. I mean, I think I would say that from my own experience, like the best way for people to learn is in person, like learning firsthand from somebody. Here's this plant, here's how you use it, here's how you eat it, here's how you take care of it. But given that my experience was so different because I didn't have anybody, I think that there are a lot of people out there that have similar experiences. They don't have an elder or a family member that has that knowledge to directly give to them. So how do we create resources or ways to provide that to those people in a safe way, right? Because as you know, like a lot of knowledge can be taken into the wrong hands and used for the wrong ways. And so, a lot of what I'm trying to figure out is what are the ways that we can communicate traditional food plant knowledge effectively in a safe and positive way for some of those folks that don't have that firsthand experience or anybody to give them that firsthand experience. And that's what I'm, hopefully going to uncover in my focus group and surveys and all that stuff coming up. So
yeah. Okay. Is it just is the survey just for like tribal members in Wyoming, or are you looking? Okay.
Yeah, so it's just for Salish enrolled members and descendants that are over the age of 18.
Yeah.
So I know that kind of limits it a little bit, but I'm also looking to Salish members that are on reservation and off reservation, because I also believe that having access to land is probably a barrier as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let me know whenever you can see the wheel, the click to spin wheel.
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. I think a few people have left our meeting, but I'm going to go ahead and shuffle the names a few times and then click to spin, and we'll see who wins. If they're still here, they win a $25 gift card. And if that person could, I know, if that person could stay on after they win and send me their address so that we can get that shipped to you, that would be wonderful. All right, let's see who's going to win the $25 gift card. Is Cassandra Scott still on here?
Hey.
I don't see Cassandra. Okay. Well, we'll try again. Christina Ribideau. Are you still here, Christina?
I think she is.
I think so too. Oh, yay. Okay, congratulations, Christina. And again, thank you to our guest speakers. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. Thank you, thank you. And I hope you guys will register for our next webinar, which will be going over AISES scholarships and stuff like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone. Christina, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Did you want to just email me your address, or do you want to type it in the chat?
Yeah, put it
Oh,
in the chat.
perfect. Okay. Let me copy that real quick.
I'm really rural, so we don't get mail to our house, but
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, 1135 Chiloquin. Is that how you say that?
Chiloquin.
Chiloquin. Okay.
Yeah, Southern Oregon.
Oregon.
This
How
was
far
so
is that
great.
from Portland? Wasn't it? I
Oh,
was
like,
blown away.
yeah, it was so cool. Portland's at the top of the state. We're at the very bottom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that
then
was so cool. I love that.
yes. I'm glad that you stayed on a little bit late to get your gift card. I'm writing down
Yeah,
here. Hang on one second.
it's cool. That's so cool. Yeah, I'll be at the
Oh,
next one too. My supervisor sent me this and I was like, "Oh, this is great." And then I'm gonna sign up for or register for the conference that you guys are having. It's gonna be in Portland.
great.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes, it is so cool. Like,
Oh, I can't wait to meet you in person then.
yeah,
It's
I'll
gonna be
be
so
there.
cool. Okay, well, thank you, Christina, and have a good rest of your night.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.